Hi, welcome to the channel, and in today's video I am reviewing Spiderman No Way Home theater release. So I went to see Spiderman No Way Home on its opening night, Thursday, at about 6 o'clock. Avoided all the spoilers. I've seen some of them online, that came out months ago, but I tried to avoid the major ones, which I did successfully. I knew Toby and Andrew would be in it, not based off of any confirmation, but just speculation for years now, or whatever it's been since it was first speculated. But I avoided any solid confirmation on it, any screenshots, things like that, especially since the movie had released a day prior for the premiere. I think it opened in the UK a day earlier, so I avoided all of that. And then I saw it again 3 days later on Sunday in IMAX, and that's why I waited to do the review, because I wanted to view it the two times since I'd already had the tickets. Because sometimes you get a little emotional on first viewing, and you pick up on things the second time around, and you kind of form a better opinion with multiple showings. Like, for instance, Rise of Skywalker, when I left that film, I knew it wasn't good, but I guess I didn't think it was terrible. I just knew it wasn't very good. But after watching it a second time, I was like, no, this movie's pretty terrible, and it absolutely is terrible. There's very good qualities to that film, outside of it being a Star Wars film and seeing some characters that we've grown to like and growth, but it was a jumbled mess. But this review is not about the Rise of Skywalker. Maybe I will do a full in-depth review on my thoughts on that movie down the road, even though it's a few years old. So anyway, I absolutely loved the movie. I'm a big comic book film fan, but I will be critical where it needs to be critical, and it's opinion. Everyone's got their own opinion. But if I feel a movie's not good, I'm going to say it. I don't think Ant-Man and the Wasp is a good movie. I think it's one of the worst in the MCU. And like everybody, Thor Dark World is probably the worst one to me. But given the choice to watch either Thor Dark World or Ant-Man and the Wasp over again, I would probably pick Thor Dark World. But neither of them were good. So I absolutely love this film. I feel it did everything it needed to do. It had a lot of hype. It had a lot of going on in it, in comparison to when Spider-Man 3 first came out. It had the three villains, and it kind of just called it in. After watching Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, the originals with Tobey Maguire, you go into Spider-Man 3 with a certain expectation based on the two previous films, and it was a huge letdown. But going from that, I had my reservations about this one. I thought it would be a fun movie, but not necessarily a good movie, like story-wise and pacing and writing. But to my surprise, it actually hit everything. It's a huge fan service movie, and there's nothing wrong with that. It had to be, and it was a fan service movie that still was a very good movie. It didn't get too corny with the fan service, but it got a lot in there. This is a spoiler review. Hopefully you kind of got that already and aren't this far in. And I imagine by now, even if you haven't seen it, Toby and Andrew were in the film. We did know from the trailers that the villains were in it. They gave that away in the trailers. And seeing the villains back was amazing. Sandman and Dr. Connors, the Lizard, they don't offer anything to the movie. In fact, I believe they weren't physically there for filming, that they just did some voice acting, I believe, and they reused any shots of like Thomas Hayden Church and the end of the film for the actor that played Dr. Connors. I forget his name, Rise something. But their characters are just kind of filler. They're just there. In no point ever do they serve too much of a purpose. There's the first time you meet Sandman, he has a purpose because he blocks Electro's attack on Peter, where Peter knew nothing about the character and wasn't ready for it. But outside that, they really didn't serve too much. They were just there because the other villains were there, minus Topher Grace's Venom from the third Spider-Man, and Harry Osborn as Hobgoblin, which, you know, based on that movie anyways, he kind of redeemed himself, so I wouldn't really call him still a villain at that point. And he also, you know, there's some issues out there with James Franco. I'm sure they didn't want him back. And Topher Grace, I would have liked to have him in there, especially over one of the other two, but I feel that, you know, maybe they didn't want to cause confusion because they have their own version of Venom, you know, with Tom Hardy, which if you watched the end credit scene of Let There Be Carnage, you saw that Venom is in the MCU universe, the same universe as Tom Holland. And I'll touch on that after credit scene that involves that at the end of the review here when I get to the end of the film. But it starts off a little slow, but there's nothing wrong there. It had to set up, but the story picks up right where you would expect once the villains come in, and even then there's a little drop off between that, you know, here and there, from the villains coming in to, you know, spoiler again if you're this far in, tough luck I guess, and the movie's been out for, you know, quite a while now, almost a full week, to when Andrew and Toby enter the film. And once the scene, if you've seen the film, where Norman, William Dafoe's character Green Goblin, when he turns to the very full villainous Green Goblin, from that scene on forward, the movie is spectacular. Like, absolutely spectacular. I can't find too much fault in anything from there on. It's similar to Endgame, which I do think Infinity War is a better film than Endgame. But Endgame, where you have the first half, to me Endgame is almost like two films. You have the first half, the lead up, the setup, getting everything in place, and then the battle scene forward through the rest of the movie is just, to me, phenomenal, which is why Endgame in my book has a high score, because of that second half is so great. It's not as great overall as Infinity War, because Infinity War I feel is great from start to finish, and the first half of Spider-Man is better than the first half of Endgame. So in my final score that I'll get to, I do place my score for Spider-Man No Way Home higher than Endgame, and I wouldn't place it as a film higher than Infinity War, but it's right there, you know, and I'll explain my thought process in that. So Andrew and Toby come into the film, and from there on, there's a lot of nostalgia, so that gets you, like, the emotions, you know, like I know a lot of people cried during those scenes. You know, it's just great to see them on the screen portraying these characters again. Whether you liked their iterations or not, or you don't remember them as well, most of us that are watching these films now grew up with them. So yeah, so it's major fan service, major nostalgia. They hit all the marks. When Andrew comes on the screen, both times I saw it, the audience went crazy. And then you get an even bigger pop when Toby comes onto the screen. I thought it was really clever the way they brought them in, because it was more of an introduction than them kind of showing up, which still would have been great. You know, them just appearing in the film would have been great no matter how they did it. But I think most assumptions, including my own, were that they would just show up and like, hey, we're here to help, you know, or these are our villains, we'll you know, take them in our own hand. But the way they brought them into the film, I thought was very clever, and you know, I just thought it was great. And you once it started happening, you knew that this was the moment, which kind of built up the anticipation in their introduction. I think the way the characters themselves, Andrew and Toby, when they came in, I thought they were spot on. I know a lot of people said that Andrew stole the show, and I wouldn't say stole the show. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise when he actually is a phenomenal actor, and in that regard, I feel that it just goes to show how much better people are, good actors, when they have a good, well-written script and have the right direction. Because Andrew was amazing in this film, no pun intended for Amazing Spider-Man, and I thought Jamie Foxx was excellent. And again, I think Jamie Foxx is an amazing actor. Django Unchained, I think that's an excellent movie, and he's had other roles where his acting is really shown through. And Andrew, I don't recall too many Andrew Garfield films, but every film that I remember watching, I always thought he did great, regardless of what the script was. And I'm not a hater of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films. I think he did good for what he was given, and also, at that time, in its style of comic book films out at that time, it did okay. I don't think Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a very good film. I thought the first one, when I originally saw it, I thought was good. I haven't really rewatched either of them since. And in retrospect, I have rewatched Spider-Man 3 recently. And that was a film that I borderline hated because I was so disappointed in it after watching it. And now rewatching it, I kind of grew an appreciation for it. And I'm not saying that Sam Raimi made a great film and that his vision is what people now see it as, like he was some genius at the time, because he did make 2 previous films that were excellent, so he certainly is very talented. But I think he missed the mark with Spider-Man 3. But when you revisit it, you kind of grow an appreciation, because for one, you miss the character, which is why it's so great to see Tobey back. But you also aren't going into it with that expectation of what you had after watching the first 2 Tobey Maguire films. Now you're going into it like, okay, this movie was pretty bad, and it's kind of funny, like it's almost as a comedy, and a lot of the scenes from that has kind of grown into its own meme out there with the Bully Maguire stuff, which some of those are just absolutely fantastic. So I don't want to spoil too much more of the film as far as the plot, so I'm not going to discuss the plot. Most people watching this review have seen it because I've spoiled the main parts of the film. But I would give the film, on a scale of 1 to 10 that I do my scoring on, I would give it a 9.6, which is extremely high. I think the only movies that I have higher than a 9.6 are The Dark Knight, Joker, and yeah, that's it actually, because I give The Matrix about 9.6. I would have to re-review it and actually give it a score. My top 3 films of all time are The Dark Knight, The Matrix, and Infinity War. And those 3 are kind of tied. I don't really pick one over the other. And I would give No Way Home the same score as Infinity War, and just a tiny bit under The Dark Knight. And to be honest, if I were to watch one of the 2 films again, No Way Home or The Dark Knight, I would probably pick Spider-Man No Way Home the majority of the time. Because, yeah, The Dark Knight is a better film, from start to finish. And obviously the Joker and Heath Ledger, just amazing. But Spider-Man No Way Home is a lot more fun, And I have fun watching The Dark Knight, even though it's a dark film. I have fun watching it. It's not the fun that I get from No Way Home, and a lot of that is the nostalgia. But it's well done nostalgia that even after repeated viewings, it still lands. The interaction of the characters, when they first start to work together as a team, and that shot of them running and then jumping like in the sky and landing, it really hits, and they just do it phenomenal. And then I'm sure most people saw from the trailer, and it was speculated, where Mary Jane starts to fall, or MJ, and it is Andrew that saves her. you know, kind of redeeming himself from the mistake in Amazing Spider-Man 2 where Gwen died. And that's in a very emotional moment, you know, when he kind of saves her, and, you know, again, his acting is great in this, and you could see his emotion, and immediately thinks of Gwen, and, you know, it's just really nice, and the audience loved that scene. And it's a very emotional film, you know, emotional with nostalgia and happiness, and then sadness, because it's the darkest Spider-Man movie. As fun as it is, and all the great moments, there's dark, sadder moments in there, you know, with Aunt May's passing, you know, where she, you know, as soon as she started to say the line, you know, that everyone knows from Spider-Man, you know, with great power comes with great responsibility. As soon as she started to say that line, I knew that was it for her, that she was going, and it's almost as, this is the third Tom Holland film, but it's almost an origin story, because we don't know too much about Uncle Ben. You know, there was the Easter egg in Far From Home, the suitcase had his initials, so we assume he existed, but we don't know what part he played in Tom's life. It could be nothing. He could have, you know, they could be divorced. He might not even be dead. He could be divorced from his aunt. You know, we have no idea. So Aunt May, you know, the build-up in the first two films to have her be that iconic role that Uncle Ben played in the previous universes, I thought was a great choice, and Marissa Tomei acted very well. And I didn't mention William Dafoe, of course. I mean, has he ever had a film where his acting wasn't phenomenal, regardless, even if the film's not great? You know, there's a lot of actors like that out there, but he nailed it, and I'm glad they took the mask off in this film. You know, his first appearance is that iconic look you remember, so you get that from nostalgia, but then they changed it, so throughout the movie, when he was in the movie, you still got that iconic character, but you got to see more emotion, like more evolve from the previous character into this new one. And, you know, it's the same character, but you get to see William Dafoe's face, you know, which was a gripe against the original, is that he's such a good actor that you took his facial expressions away behind and put it behind a mask. But this one, you get to see it, and he just does absolutely phenomenal. I can't even really pick who was the best actor in this film, because they all did so great. You know, they played the roles perfect. All three Spider-Men. I think Zendaya's a great actress. Doctor Strange did great, but if I did have to give the top acting role in this film award to someone, it probably would be Dafoe, and then closely followed by Tom, Andrew, and Marissa Tomei, probably all tied for second, because they all did great. So yeah, that's it. Those are my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you thought. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we will be giving away 4K discs for every review we do of each disc. And then before I go on, I touch on the end credit scene, or the mid credit scene of Tom Hardy. I know a lot of people are really upset that they put Tom Hardy and Venom into the universe and then took him away. To me, I think it's great. Now, I think Tom Hardy is a phenomenal actor. Peaky Blinders, he does so good in that. If you haven't watched that show, it's worth a watch just for his stuff in there. But it's a good show overall. But I thought Let There Be Carnage was okay. I'm not a fan big time of either Venom movie. In fact, the first one I didn't like at all. But I see its appeal to some people, and I just don't feel that version of Venom would fit in the MCU. So I'm sad that Tom Hardy isn't going to be the actor in the MCU, but I'm very glad that version of Venom is not the Venom that's going to be in the MCU. At least for now. At least that's the way they portray it, and I hope that's what they do. And in the scene, you see that a piece of the symbiote is left behind, which opens up that we are going to get Venom in the MCU, but it can be a very different Venom, which is what I'm excited for that, because I would like to see, you know, a Venom. I thought Topher Grace did a great job. You know, that Venom was not well written. That movie wasn't well written, to be honest. But I'm excited to see if they could get the right actor and the right type of Venom that they want to use. You know, like, you know, which direction they want to take the character. But I'm very excited for it. I think that they did that perfectly, even though I understand it's going to upset people because they brought the Tom Hardy Venom and then took him away. So far, who knows, I could change. But I'm excited for that. And that's it. Please like the video, drop your comments below, and subscribe if you haven't already.